With the ominous note left hanging in the air, Vasco departed alongside the Undead Legion, leaving Finn to look after their newly formed crew. Finn's eyes darted around the chaotic scene about him, suddenly anxious of any dangers that might befall him, now that he was without a competent guiding hand. Alas, his fears were answered in the form of an arachnid terror, barreling towards him and his bumbling group. Exasperated, Finn cried out, "Don't just stand around! Fucking leg it!" Try as they might to escape the advancing maiden, she was too fast to lose on foot. With lungs burning and his legs screaming for a moment of rest, his thundering steps came to a halt as he turned to face the monstrous girl head-on. Desperation gripped his features as he stammered out something, anything to stop her from laying into them as he had seen her do to several others already. Oi, if you pretend you never saw us, we'll let you have some of these spoils. Come on, from one subhuman to another, give us mercy. She stopped in her tracks, not far from them, and seemed to consider his gambit critically before she spoke to them in a small, cutesy voice that worked in stark contrast with her intimidating appearance.
If I didn't catch the crazies that started this whole bonkers bonanza, Lady Solicit'd be disappointed.
Her chitinous arm clacked against her head as a compromise came to mind.
Oh, I know. You could give me half of the people in your crew to arrest, as well as some of those morsels, the dead piggy ones, and I'll let the others go. Between you and me, you don't seem like such a bad guy. At least you'd probably get beat if you tried anything. So I'll let you in on a secret. When they get arrested, they'll probably be shipped off to a town north of here, on the Swervedgard border, since the prison is still in construction here after everything got straight after the revolution. You could try rescuing him there.
Finn's face fell as the reality of the situation was pressed upon him. Not 10 minutes had passed and he had already failed his best friend. The weight of this was almost enough to crush him, but Finn knew he had to stay strong. Deep down he knew that they wouldn't win in a fight with her, especially not once reinforcements arrived. All he could do was lay down his arms and accept his fate. I don't like it, but I'll have to take you up on that offer. Too much is at stake right now to do this any other way. I can't disappoint him so soon. He turned to his men and told them his decision. It's time to draw lots, lads. Half of you gotta go. I promise, this won't be the end. You hear?
Aye.
Voice cracking with emotional strain, he turned back to the maiden. Thanks. I hope you're right about this, else I'm about as good as dead. She shrugged nonchalantly as she began to dig into the cart of entrails for her prize.
You probably will be if you don't leave pretty soon. Those sword guys over there won't give you the same treatment I did.
Wordlessly, the now halved crew escaped with not much to show for the struggles they had endured up to this point. It was a big blow to his pride, but Finn was determined to make things right. Not wanting to endanger the remaining crew members under his guidance, he sent them out to the outskirts of Cairn, towards the eastern coast to await his return. He broke from the group and marched off towards the darkening sky, intent on following the trail onwards so that he might reclaim what was lost. The chill of the night bit past the meager protection of Finn's scales as he braved forwards towards anything that would lead him in the right direction. Dim lights danced on the horizon, drawing him onwards instinctively to get out of the biting cold. He had stumbled upon a desolate shanty town on the outskirts of Cairn, along with a few wary strangers that were gathered around campfires that were set up close to the ramshackle buildings that dotted the landscape in his vision. Being familiar with this destitute lifestyle, Finn had no trouble appearing natural as he sidled up to the fire under the pretenses of getting warm. There was an old man, a younger blond fellow, and a hooded figure. He slipped some of the fish from his bag and skewered them onto sticks to be distributed to the three strangers he was sharing the fire with, hoping that it would be enough to earn their trust. The old man of the group cracked a smile at the offering. "Mighty thanks, stranger. The younger man made idle conversation in a hushed tone. You hear the rumor going around, stranger? They say Swervengard's been trading with Cairn like crazy lately. They've been sending out all kinds of scrolls and tomes to the border. In exchange, they get supplies and prisoners. Quite a strange thing, though. The amounts of shipments have been increasing lately, too, as if they were trying to prepare to wait out a war. The old man sighed. Aye. Well, that's just word of mouth. We won't know for sure until the war is on top of us, unfortunately. Which is why we should get moving, Denzel. Perhaps there's something there for us in Swervengard. Denzel's gaze turned towards his younger companion with the worn-out tone of voice that suggested he'd already said something like this a dozen times before. The people living in this hovel are too weak to survive that journey, let alone the bitter cold. My aim is the protection of my fellow man, not the rising of status. If you wish to leave, you may do so on your own. Hearing this kind of banter between old friends made Finn feel a twinge of nostalgia in his heart. It had been a long time since he had had the pleasure of being in the company of some fellow lowlives. The scaled hand of the hooded fellow, along with the flash of a golden muzzle, all but confirmed that the other stranger in their midst was in fact a kobold like himself. It was a pleasant sight, to say the least, so he figured he'd be best to greet this one as well. Thoughts of war filled him with pity for the lone kobold, and the rest of them for that matter. The rest of his kinsmen would be spared the bullied conflict with their isolation. One sliver of mercy in a sea of regret, unfortunately not granted to these folk. His hands worked busily at the fire to roast his fish evenly before he began to take a few test bites from it. Finn tutted at the news. Aye, that is strange. Sounds like they're gearing up for some big project. It's funny you should mention it, though. A bunch of me mates got nabbed back in Cairn. Might just be where they were sent to. After assuring that the fish was cooked to perfection, he finished it off in 3 neat bites, wiping the pungent oil from his lips before continuing. I'm keen on rescuing them if I can manage it, but I'm not sure if I've got the resources to do it, or the know-how for that matter. Still got to try, eh? He turned his attention to the other kobold who had been silent thus far, curious as to how he or she ended up here. Oh, what's the story, friend? I've not seen many of our kind out here before. The kobold spoke with a smooth yet sharp voice, dictating a woman distrustful of Finn and the others. There is no story. I'm a filthy half-breed, unaccepted by your kind of the islands and the lizardman clans of the northwest. I'm simply trying to survive like the rest here. She had pulled back her hood slightly when she spoke to Finn, perhaps out of the simplest courtesy of showing her face when speaking. Her scales were pointed and hard in some areas, yet the majority were smooth like Finn's. Her tail lowered from under her cloak, and it too possessed long, sharp fins. The golden sheen of her scales was rather enchanting in a way, yet considering her demeanor it was also like that of a poisonous animal, using bright color to warn predators of toxin. He was stunned by her beauty, almost to the point that he didn't even realize she probably thought he was the scum of the earth. He picked up his jaw off the floor and listened to what Denzel had to say next. I'd assume if they were taken prisoner in Cairn, then construction has halted them from actually residing in a prison there. You've likely already heard this, but the closest town with a prison to Cairn is Sawyer's Mill, and that's some miles north. 5 or 6, roughly. That's all I know about any such prison escapades. He eyed the hooded man sitting at the other fire some distance away, who had gotten up and walked inside a shanty, leaving the fire to a few others who'd gather afterwards. I'd imagine that man would know much more on such a thing, considering his aura. Still slightly dazed, Finn spoke with a start. It's a start. I didn't mean any harm by the question. I just miss seeing other kobolds around us all. I'm sorry to hear about it though, lass. I'm not very welcome back home either. He looked over to the cabin that escaped prisoner had walked into, trying to calm down a little bit. Wordlessly, the Lady Kobold pulled the hood back over her face, keeping her keen blue eyes on him, but at the same time maintaining a more easygoing aura.
Ooh, focus, Finn. People are talking.
The blond man ate his fish noisily as he continued after Denzel, clarifying that the mysterious man was of little harm before finishing in time to introduce himself. Anyway, my name's Cliff Fitter. What's the goal you've had that's bad enough that you're trying to bust your mates out of prison? I'm Finn. Nice to meet you. Well, it's kind of a long story, but I cut a deal with this fella to help him cross the Tomb Sea while he can help me claim new lands for the kobolds. We split up after a riot broke out in Karn, which led to half the prospective crew folk getting nabbed by the guards when we was trying to escape. I don't want to ruin the arrangement by letting half the crew get imprisoned before we even started the voyage, so I set out to go bust them out. Crossing the sea ain't gonna be easy, especially without a good number of people on our side. The reception was lukewarm, to say the least. Denzel seemed to think it was a reasonably noble goal, despite the fumbling on Finn's part. Cliff was intrigued by the idea, and the half-breed seemed simply dumbfounded by Finn's stupidity. She squinted at him. I'm not gonna get into the whole quarrel that is claiming new land for the kobolds or your riot, but have you lost your fucking mind? That sea is as treacherous as Nijahi's wrath itself. Do you sincerely think about the kind of suicide quest you're embarking on? Denzel hushed her there, extending the palm of his hand for peace. If it's the man's goal, do not pressure him otherwise, Kara. Commitment in the face of adversity is the mark of bravery. Kara just hissed at that. It seemed she could only see it as throwing one's life away for nothing. Cliff, meanwhile, shook Finn's hand and unceremoniously asked to join Finn's party. Well, sorry, Denzel, but if Finn will have me, I'll have to be joining him on this venture. Denzel rolled his eyes and Kara facepalmed while Finn stood in something of a stunned silence. Well, I can't blame you for thinking that way, but this is my only shot at redemption, unfortunately. Trust me, if there was another option with less of a chance towards certain death, I'd take it. He looked over to Cliff with some uncertainty. As for you, I want you to know that there's a high chance you could eat it out there. I don't want another thing on my conscience if you're doing this all willy-nilly. He fiddled with the coin purse tied around his neck before dropping it on the ground with a satisfying jingle. It's not much, but y'all should take this. It'd probably do you folk more good than me. Cliff shook his head. I lost the right to life a long time ago, friend. Aimlessness is all that awaits me elsewhere. Cliff said, his hair falling down over his eyes. Denzel's eyes clouded over as well, and the thought of the mention of it. Cliff brushed his hair away and regained his energetic, if somewhat apathetic, demeanor. It's settled then. I'll go gather some things from the shanties. In the meanwhile, you go get the plan from Mr. Runaway. With that, Cliff disappeared into the detritus shacks, gathering what little he had left. The coin sack dropped in front of Denzel, but he pushed it towards Kara. My obligation is here, to see through those who gather are not swept away without the care of their fellow man. I doubt many of these people would have it any other way, as well, considering their reverie for my ideals. In contrast, the half-breed took it willingly and stood, tail swinging slightly. Suppose we'll be off then, old man. Take care not to let the phantoms of the past consume you. Your brethren would be shamed, she said somewhat mournfully. She shook Finn's hand with her own, though it was delicate and soft one-handed shake. Any luck on your travels, psychopath? Perhaps we'll meet again someday out in the west. She didn't mince words, but at least she didn't find him altogether unsalvageable. Ouch. Way to lay it on thick, lady. Can a guy ever get a break? See you around, Kara. There was a little hopefulness there. His hand felt tickly. Well, with that over with, he walked over to the other man's shack to do business. As he approached the poorly constructed shack and pushed aside the cloth hanging in place of a door, he let out a grunt as the man in question made his way out of the hut and they crashed into each other. Atlas Almighty, watch where you're damn walking, eh? You're walking like a man with a mission, so let me take a gander, he said, looking Finn over. Uh-huh, you're looking to bust someone out of prison, and you figure the convict guy has the best way to do what you're doing. Am I right? He seemed to be waiting for Finn to say otherwise, but he just shrugged before continuing. Well, you're damn right. I could probably get you in and out till the whole place is under. Question B, what's in it for me? He got to the point at least. He also seemed somewhat tipsy. Finn was understandably bewildered at this series of events. He was about to start panicking that this man was some kind of witch who could read his mind before he realized he was probably just listening into their conversation from before. Yeah, that about sums it up. I, seem to be less financially prepared than I was a few seconds ago, but I do have a little quality booze for someone of discerning taste like yourself. He wielded a flask enticingly. The man seemed to consider it for a second before deciding to make the deal all by himself. Say, word is you're going on some death quest. At least that's what I reckon I gathered from that pinprick gold sheen wave about. He turned back to Finn. I want in. A death's a death's a death, as far as I'm concerned. Been a coward too long, running from what's coming. Besides, I want to belong out there on the sea again, not cooped out of a cell in this shit stain of a shelter. He yelled, kicking the hut he was leaning against. Immediately, the whole thing collapsed down on him and Finn. They both had to push all manner of trash out the way to get on solid ground again. The others around just glanced for some moments, then looked away again. Case in point, he said, climbing out and sitting atop the wreckage. I want out of this dickle life and on the water with you. Well, that makes things a whole lot simpler. We'll have you gladly. Another fine addition to the team, I say. He reached out a hand for the man to shake. He just laughed and pushed aside Finn's arm before patting his shoulder. That's the kind of bravado I was hoping for. He pulled his potato sack hood down and let his greasy blue hair fall down in his face. Shiva Onglas, former Vice Admiral of the King's Navy, by which I mean the last shogun of Ryu. Former samurai, former privateer, and finally, former prisoner. Currently going back to prison. After he mentioned his title and rank, the rest of what the man had to say was little more than background noise, as he realized he was right in front of, even working with, one of the bastards he hated most. Memories he had shoved down deep inside of him, and worked so hard to wipe away with alcohol, were seeping to the top of his mind like scum. He could still hear that scream. Oh God, the scream. The guttural sound of someone's lung being filled with blood. Only the last question was able to break him from this daze. Former samurai, former privateer, and finally, former prisoner. Currently going back to prison, he said with a chuckle. I'll take what I can get from the prison as compensation for my efforts. Maybe get a bath somewhere, he said, as if no longer acknowledging that his former price was joining the crew. The spear on his back clacked with each gesture. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, reminds me. Now that we're working together, I don't need to sell these anymore. He brought up nonchalantly, taking the spear from his back and passing it back to Finn, as well as pulling a flask of moonshine from his pouch and giving it back to him. They were his, and Finn realized the Master Thief had managed to get both of them from him while having your full attention. First things first, where'd they get busted? The rest of the conversation was carried out in a hollow, businesslike tone, all the humor from his voice evaporating as he swallowed his pride and relayed the important details. All that was left was to go.